This series of 5 classes is sponsored in loving memory of Shishaya ben Yisrael and Sarah Bas Leib. May this learning elevate their souls and help them as much as possible. And may the sponsors of these classes, as well as their family and future generations, be blessed in every way possible. Amen. Okay, last week we talked about a very fascinating Indian, which is all about Amalek, if you recall. And the amazing thing about Amalek is we realize that basically everybody's doing what Amalek does, which is how to compromise God. It's really what we saw. The only difference is, of course, Amalek was mercenaries. They were willing to die to stop the Jews from promoting this religion, right, in which a man is really completely subservient to God. That's no Kota Amalek. So we saw that last week. So in many ways, of course, that's a major theme of Purim. Today, however, what I want to do is go into Purim itself, try to understand what is Purim really all about. So as such, there's really a lot to think about, as we will see. However, first I want to mention something which I was tremendously taken. There was a great man, I think it's Dov Weiss Mendel, who was Rosh Yeshiva of Nitra. He's famous because he was trying to rescue Jews in the Holocaust. He wrote a famous book called Out of the Depths, Min HaMetzah. He's one of the heroes, really, of the Holocaust itself. But he also was a mathematical genius, incredible head for numbers. He's the one that originated the whole concept of codes. You know what a code is? A code is where you start from a letter and you skip a certain amount of amounts until you reach the next letter, and so on, and then it spells out a word. And that word is a remez, especially wherever it's stated in the parsha. I went into the whole thing of codes, but he's the one that was Machadesh. He is one who discovered that the Torah itself has codes. You see, now codes is really part of the, believe it or not, Lamed Beis Midas. It's called Notarikans. You have Rosh Tevis, the heads of letters. You have Sif Tevis, as was said, which is the end of words. Then you have skip words, skip letters, which can skip a specific amount, and you derive a lot of different ideas. Anyway, so there was once somebody who visited him, and he asked him, where is Esther alluded to in the Megillah? So he said, so Weissman told him, I figured it out. And what he's about to say is an absolutely astounding proof of the divinity of the Torah. He said, if you start, now, the Megillah has, if I remember correctly, 12,192 letters. Well, it has, you count them, right? So he said, if you start from the first time the Aleph appears in the Torah, which is R.A.Y, the third letter, Bereshis is Beis Reish Aleph, so the first time it appears is the third time letter in the Torah. And if you count the exact amount of letters in the Megillah, which is, let's say, 12,192, right? You will come to another letter, which is a Samach. Okay, and if you count again 12,192, you will come to a Tav, and then Reish, Esther, which is astounding. That means whoever wrote the Torah knew that there would be an Esther. Now the Torah was written, or given, I should say, 1248 BCE. And the events of the Megillah happened about 300 BCE. That's about 900 years, whatever, before the event ever occurred. So not only did the one who wrote the Torah knew that there would be an Esther in the future, right? He knew exactly that there would be a Megillah, and that the Megillah would have 12,192 letters. What is that? There is no possible. You see. So the guy was floored. Esther's the Megillah as a code with the skip sequence, that's what it's called, with the exact amount of letters in the Megillah. It's impossible. And remember, whoever wrote the Torah had to include that code in a narrative, because the Torah is about a narrative. So not only does it have the code for Esther, right? It is a narrative also that has to make sense. Incredible. Then he asked the guy, he said to Rabbi Mendel, what about Mordechai? Where's he? So Rabbi Mendel says, I haven't figured it out. Come back next year, maybe I'll have figured it out. So he came back next year, year passed, came back next year on Purim, right? And he says, well, where's Mordechai? So Rabbi Mendel said, I figured it out. The parsha that you usually read on Purim is Tetzaveh. And in Tetzaveh, there's a pasuk. In fact, it says in the Gemara, where is Mordechai Merumez in the Torah? So it says Mordror, which sounds like Mordechai. These are the ingredients, okay, of, I think, of the Keteris and so on, So he said if you count from the word Mor, which is a mem, right, and you count 12,191 letters, you come to a resh. Do it again, and you come to a dalet. Do it again, and you come to a chof. You do it again, you come to a yud, Mordechai. So it's a star. How in the world can anybody who wrote the Torah, again, know that there would be a Mordechai, right? That there would be a Megillah, and that it would have exactly the amount of letters. It's impossible. You see? So the guy was floored, So anyway, to me, these are the greatest proofs of the divinity of the Torah, because no human could ever figure this out. So he went home and so on, and then he had a guest for Shabbos, a woman who was a mathematics major, apparently. So he told her this, and she said, nah, it can't be, So what happened was, overnight, he comes in the morning and he sees this woman, she's white. He says, what happened? You didn't sleep last night? So the woman said, no, I didn't sleep last night. I was trying to calculate the probability through chance that somebody could have known this, not because they knew, but maybe a chance. Maybe a guy wrote a narrative and just happened to have that Esther and Mordechai spelled out the exact amount of letters in the Megillah. Chance. That's the only other alternative. So she said that the probability is beyond it's beyond comprehension. The probability that somebody could have written these codes, right, through chance alone is inconceivable. You see. So that's what she said. Then a couple of years later, he goes to a wedding, this guy, and the woman comes over to him and says, you remember me? So she said, no. She says, I'm the woman, the mathematics major, that was a guest in your house, So he looks at her, and she's got a shekel on. She was fried when he invited her. A shekel, and she says, I want to tell you something, that code was so astounding that I became from. I married a curl guy, and I'm from, he was a curl. Unbelievable, you see. To me, that's one of the greatest proofs of the divinity of the Torah. It's impossible. Chance can never account for this. Anyway, I thought I would share with that because it's mamish the Megillah. So the Megillah is marumas in the Torah through a mathematically inconceivable code. Okay. I thought that was just absolutely incredible. So that's kedai to share with you, what the Torah really is and so on. Okay. I'm going to ask you a series of questions about Purim. Okay? And this year will be about trying to answer them. And the questions really are, in many ways, very obvious. Question one, what is the essence of Purim? Purim is a classic story of a hero, Mordechai, a heroine, Esther, and a villain, Haman. It's a classic, I hate to say, Hollywood script. It's got all the elements, and it's got the drama, it's got the suspense, and all that stuff, and it got an incredible ending. It's what's called a surprise ending, and so on, What is that? What is the essence, really, of Purim? What are we supposed to get out of Purim, right? The essential, what's called a message. What message does Purim deliver us? And in many ways, as we will see, that is the essential message of Purim. It's called a take-home message. What do we take home from this? So that is the first question. Another question, we have halachas of Purim. We have matanos leviyanim. Why? I mean, it's a mitzvah to give tzedakah every day, you know? What's the matter? Why did Chazal, the rabbis, masakin or promulgate a mitzvah to give matanos leviyanim, especially on this day, more than in general the mitzvah of tzedakah? You think about it, you know? Then we have the mitzvah of mishloach manos. You know, it's nice to receive food from your neighbor, you know, but why? Why do we have to give two types of food to somebody that you know or whatever, you know? What is that? I mean, it's a chesed, but what does that have to do with Purim? All the halachas must connect to Purim. So that's a third kasha. Then we have the famous concept of costumes. Why is everybody running around in costume? You know, and it's all kinds. I mean, the kids walk around with these incredibly imaginative costumes. You know, why? I mean, I hope it's not a takeoff of Halloween. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the goyish where they have costumes and all and so on. You know, and so the question is, therefore, what is the concept of costumes? It's got to have a basis somehow in the essential idea of Purim. Another question, why is Purim a holiday? I don't understand something. People have been trying to kill the Jews, right, from time immemorial, right? Avram was the first one that they tried to kill. Nimrod, Purim the first, right? You know, I mean, do we celebrate a holiday of Avram Avinu being saved because in the furnace? No furnace holidays. You know what I'm saying? So why is it that it's a holiday? The real question is, how do Chazal know when to make a Yom Tov? I mean, Purim is a major holiday. Purim is so great that it will be the only holiday remembered in the Yom Mashiach. You see? So how do Chazal know when to make it a holiday and when it's, hey, we've been saved many times? That's the question. How do Chazal know? Now, another question. We know also that no king after Achashverosh ever had all the Jews in one kingdom. So you couldn't kill all the Jews. The last time that occurred was by Achashverosh, because he was the king of 127 Medinas, right? And every Jew was under his reign. You see, after that, it never happened again. Jews were then spread out all over and so on. What's the significance of that? That Purim would happen in the time of Achashverosh, when all the Jews were subjects of Achashverosh as the king, or the emperor, whatever he was, and so on. That's an important historical consideration or question. Also, who's the major villain of Purim? It's Haman. So the question then is, why does an Amaleki, Haman, appear like Purim? I mean, you could say, well, he just happened to be the Grand Vizier, right? And he happened to be a megalomaniac, right? And he had to happen that everybody has to bow to the God, you know? It happened. Is that what it is? Or is there something special about Purim that brings out an Amaleki? You see, is it just had chance? Or is there something special that Purim had to have as the villain an Amaleki? Interesting question. We don't even think about that, right? But as you'll see, the answer is yes. It has to be an Amaleki. The question is why. Okay? So that's another question. Then we have, the Zohar says that Purim is greater than Yom Kippur because, because Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim, right? A day of atonement. But Yom, a day, Kippurim, like Purim, but not equal to Purim. That's incredible. Purim is greater in Ruchnius than Yom Kippur. Wow. That's incredible. And the funny thing about it, you think that Purim, where you have to have a Suda, right? Yom Kippur, you fast, you think you're more spiritual. Purim, where you eat, more Gashmias, you're more materialistic. Yet the materialism of Purim is greater than the fast of Yom Kippur. That's what the Zohar says. Why? It's an incredible idea, you see. So that also is a very difficult question to understand. It's based on the Zohar. Then we come across, of course, one of the most favorite mitzvahs of Purim. Adil Yoda, right? Shikr, right? Did you ever hear of a mitzvah? Not that you have to drink, okay, we make kiddush, right? But that there should be a mitzvah that you need to get drunk. Why? Because in your stupor of being drunk, it's called inebriated, right? You don't know the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Orahoma. And that's really the key, right? Of course, you can kind that also by going to sleep. But why is this important? What does this have to do with Purim? I was like, incredible. You know, I have to not be able to distinguish. In other words, I have to have a state of consciousness, right? Where I cannot distinguish between blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. You see? Which, by the way, is the exact same gematria. The gematria of Baruch Mordechai and Ora Haman is the exact same thing, whatever it is, and so on, right? Like, what does this have to do with Purim? Of course, it is celebrated avidly by all those people who love to drink. In fact, what's interesting is that there are people who are what's called Zrizim Makdim in the mitzvahs. So they get drunk 6 months before, and to show that they miss it, they get drunk 6 months after. You see, so they're constantly in a state of Adil Yoda. Okay, that's a chumrah. But we, however, certainly have a mitzvah Adil Yoda. Why? Anyway, another question. You know, if I had to call Purim a name or give it a label, would I have picked the word Purim, which means lots? Lottery. Yeah, I don't think I would have picked that. There are so many other names you could pick. You know, for Purim, you know, maybe Hatzolah, you know, or whatever. But Pur, because Haman put out lots, right, to determine when to kill the Jews. So we named the Yom Tov Purim and called these lots. Why? What logic is that? You see. Yet Chazal picked the name Purim. So the question is, what hidden message is there in that word? That is the question. Another very bizarre, and this is really bizarre, right? You never find any Tanakh where the name of God is missing. There's not one mention of the name of God throughout the entire Megillah. The only place that's alluded to, and that's only an allusion, is what? Is where Mordechai says to Esther, well, you have to go to the king. Fine. And you have to try to avert the decree or whatever. So Mordechai says, and if you don't do it, rescue and salvation will come to the Jews from some other place. What other place is there? He meant the Rebbeinu. That's an allusion. So the question is, why isn't the name of God alluded to in the entire Megillah? It's bizarre when you really think about that. Okay. Anyway, so that is a difficult thing to understand. And also, you know, it says a pasuk, La Yehudim ho'yisrael v'simcha v'sosan. We call and so on, you know. I can understand that to the Jews there was a tremendous amount of simcha, you know, and merriment, and also hatzalah. What's this oira? What do you mean oira? Oira means inside. Light. What light? Right? What light was there in Purim? So what does that word refer to and so on? And there are drushes and so on. But what I want to do is connect. By the way, I asked 15 different questions. Those who are keeping count. The question is it possible to answer all of these with one understanding of Purim? You see, really what the essence of Purim is. And that's what I'm going to try to do. Is try to answer all of this with one idea. When did the origin of Purim occur? So most people think it occurred when? You know, let's say Achashverosh was, let's say, many people equate Achashverosh with Cambyses, who was one of the Persian kings. The real question is, who is Achashverosh in history? You know, because there's no, some people say he's a taxer or whatever that name is. Cambyses and so on and so forth. Anyway, the present thinking is that he's a Persian king called Cambyses, whatever and so on, But when did Purim really occur? The origins. So we say it occurred on Purim, which happened, let's say it sort of happened 450 BCE, before the common era, 450. It's a long time ago, Is that when it occurred? And the answer is no. No. Most people, it's interesting, Purim is a holiday that was meant to be. The Jews had no choice, really, even though it looks that way. But really, they had no choice. Why? What happened? It's very important for the Jews to accept the Torah. Very important. Because that means that if they accept the Torah, right, then they will observe the Torah and fulfill all the mitzvahs. Therefore, it's critical that the Jews observe the Torah. That's a very important part of the tikkun process. It's a spiritual necessity that the Jews have to perform. Very important. But what happened? It says before that it said the Jews accepted the Torah, Nasa v'nishma, which is a tremendous way of accepting the Torah. Nasa means we will do. Nishma, we will understand. In other words, what the Jews said is that we will do the Torah, right? And then we will labor to understand the Torah. That's what Yet it says that the Rebbe Shalom took the Har Sinai, he ripped it off its ground, and he put it on top of the entire nation. And he said, if you accept the Torah, fine. If not, this will be your burial place. Well, clearly he forced them. He compelled them to accept the Torah. So the question is, there's a contradiction here. We know that the Jews accepted the Torah, Nasa v'nishma, which is what? Which is love, correct? However, Nasa v'nishma, we will do, and then we will understand. They were willing to say, hey, whatever you give us is fine. Then we'll try to figure it out, fine. But our acceptance is not dependent, right? Our acceptance of the Torah is not dependent at all on our understanding. Most people say, well, I have to agree, I have to understand, and then I'll accept, right? The Jews were so trusting of the Moshe that they were willing to accept, right, even without understanding, and that would come second. That's a Kabbalah of Torah with tremendous ahava. So if that's the case, why would the Moshe have to compel them or force them, right, to take the Torah? So Tosfos deals with that question. There are answers. And he answers that, here's the deal. They accepted with total love the Torah Shabbat Peh, right? The Torah Shabbat Ksav, the written Torah. But when it came to the oral Torah, which is all the details and explanations, all that, they said, thank you and no thank you. No way. We don't want this. That's what they said. So then the Moshe said, I'm sorry. So he took them out and he said, either you accept the oral law, Torah Shabbat Peh, or I bury you all. I kill you all. Okay, which itself is an incredible idea. So the question then is, what's going on here? What is going on here of this kind? Why didn't they accept? And not only that, you can answer the question, well, what about Goyim? Goyim could say, hey, you forced them, why don't you force us? Why did we have a choice? If you would have forced us, then we would have had to take it. And we also would get even help or whatever, right? In the sense that we would have brought a tikkun rectification to the world. So why did you force us? So that you can answer. Because the Jews had already accepted part of the contract. They didn't accept the whole contract, so therefore you can force them. You guys never accepted anything, so therefore I'm not going to force you at all, because you don't even want to be part of the contract. So that's a good answer. But the real question is, what's going on here? Why didn't the Jews accept the Torah? How do you go from accepting the Torah with full ahava and not accepting anything of the oral law? Because let's face it, the oral law is a critical part of the Torah. So we need to understand what was the logic of this. Because we're not talking about 15 people. We're talking about the Jewish nation did not want the Torah Shabbat Peh. Why? That is the question. And the answer to that is a very important concept, critical concept. The reason why the Jews did not want the oral law is because here's what they said. We recognize the Torah. It is the only legitimate device to achieve ruchnius, spirituality. And that's what the Torah is. It has a tremendous amount of what? The ability to make you spiritual. We understand that. But what do we need the Torah for and all the laws of Choshen Mishpat and all that? In order to live as a civilized society. To live here. In other words, if we want to become spiritual, we need the Torah. But the Torah has a tremendous amount of laws of how to live Beinot and Chaverot. The whole Choshen Mishpat. You know what I'm saying? You have Kiddushin and Gittin, Ksubas, Choshen Mishpat. These are contracts. You know, this is what's called civil law and criminal law. You know what I'm saying? In marriage laws, hey, every society has laws like this. So they seem to do just fine. So what do I need this for? Why does the Torah have to be what everybody doesn't have the Torah, yet their societies exist and flourish, right? And we need a Torah to tell us how to be a society, how to live as a civilization. Why? You see? So what they did is they didn't understand the whole concept. Why do we need not only spiritual laws, you know, like Kochim or whatever, Taras, and you know, let's say other ideas. What does this have to do with Choshen Mishpat, which is Seder Zikin, Seder Noshim? What do we need all this for? You see, this is what they felt. But the Rebbe Hashem said to himself, "You are making a tremendous mistake." But he couldn't tell them the mistake because they have to experience the mistake. It's not enough to teach them why. You need to go through the motions and you will understand. Like they say, Ein Chochem Kabbalah Nisayon. The greatest teacher is experience. And I will show you why. But meanwhile, until you figure it out, until you come to the realization, until you are enlightened, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to force you to accept the oral law, the enormous amount of details that are beneficial for society. I will force you to do that. Because someday you guys are going to wake up through experience. Therefore, what the Jews did is really a bad thing. The Kabbalah's Torah of Torah Shabbat was bi'avo, through love. But the Kabbalah of Torah Shabbat wasn't through avo, it was through yiro, fear. That's a pagam in the Bria. That is a pagam. That is a defect of the spiritual necessity that you must accept the whole Torah bi'avo, with love. Yet here, a great deal of the Torah was being accepted because of fear. Obviously, you know, if you bury you under a mountain, obviously it's tremendous, it's fear. So therefore, they created a tremendous pagam, defect in the spiritual necessity of the mission of Klal Yisrael. Bad news. What would that require? So that would require a rectification. Somehow the Jews have to rectify that they accepted the Torah b'yira, right? And ultimately accept the Torah b'ahava. But they don't want to, because they just don't see. What do we need all these details for? You know, what do we need? What do we need all these laws about man and man civilization? You see. This was the problem. I think what I see is there are a lot of people in this audience that seem to precede Purim with Adil Yoda. People are nodding off.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. You can nod off. I don't really care. But the problem is the only reason why I stay awake is because you're awake. And therefore I have a responsibility to keep talking. But listen, I'll tirfish minat tzibur. Right? You guys gonna nod off. Guess what? I'm nodding off too. There you are. So let's wait to nod off, as they say, to go to sleep on Purim itself. Let's try to stay awake. This is the problem. We're at the point of history, right, where the Jews have created a tremendous pagam Gam in the Kabbalah Torah. That a great deal of it, or half of it, was accepted through fear. No good. The Moshe doesn't want that, because we know what happens when you accept something through fear. Ultimately, you're going to find cut corners and all that kind of stuff. Besides, the whole immune is shot and so on. You can't do that. Either what the Moshe does is perfect, right? Or it's imperfect. We can't do that. If you don't accept the Torah Sheba'al Peh, what you're really saying is the Torah is imperfect. It's not necessary. So what's he doing? You see? Therefore, the Moshe waited. You need to experience the reason. I can't just tell you. You see? So therefore, the Moshe waited. He waited for what? He waited for a time that these people will experience the reason why. The only way to live as a civilized society is how you accept the entire Torah. The Torah is not just a path to spirituality. You don't live on this earth without. Even civilizations cannot survive without living in accordance with the Torah. Wow, what a difference. Yeah, but why? I need to experience this. So the Moshe waited. What did he wait? Well, he has to wait, you see, because the Jews have to be in another civilization as free men to see what does that civilization look like. Okay, so the Torah, they go to Eretz Yisrael. On the Eretz Yisrael, they all live on their own, right? They're the nation by themselves. So they're not among Goyim, they are their own civilization, right? Then they're captured by Babel. But the problem by Babel is what? Is that they are slaves, right? Slaves of Babel. So you cannot judge. You cannot really judge that. Why? Because you're a slave. I mean, maybe your civilization is where you are because you're basically a slave. Just move to the other side. Great. Thank you. You're tall, so you can block. Can I know? Anyway, you see, the first time the Jews live as free men under another civilization is Persia. Think about that. Because after Babylon came Persia, right? That's the first time the Jews experienced freedom. They were equal subjects. There were no slaves anymore. They were equal subjects. They were loyal citizens of Persia, right? And which is beautiful, So they're under another civilization and they're free men. Gavaldi. Okay. Now God comes in. He says, okay, let's see what happens. You now have the ability as equal free men to observe Persian civilization with their laws, not Torah, which is the only way to have civilization, but to the laws that you've been entitled. Well, all civilization have laws. We need a Torah for that. Now check it out and see. And all of a sudden, they wake up one morning and they find out that there's a guy, the Grand Vizier Haman, made a deal with Achashverosh to kill them all. What? And we're not talking about one guy. The whole it's the Holocaust, literally. It's the beginning of Hitler's style of of dealing with Jews. And they also they wake up the next morning. By the way, you're doomed to all of you die. Why? Because Haman didn't like you, whatever. And Achashverosh okayed the whole plan. Fine. What did the Jews feel when that happened? Remember, they're free men in a civilization, equal to every other citizen. They wake up one morning, that Haman says, or Achashverosh says, right, and he's a king, he signed your death warrant. It's over with, right? Whatever it would be, in Adar and so on and so forth, right? What was the first reaction the Jews had when they got up that morning? I will tell you, it was shock. Not fear, it was shock. Why? What was the shock? Because wait a minute, understand something. We are loyal citizens of Persia. You pay tax, you abide by the laws. Not only that, we were part of the guy's meal, the great grand festive meal, when he celebrated the fact, right, that the Beis Hamikdash was built, whatever. We actually joined him in the meal. I mean, how more loyal can you get? We celebrated with this guy Achashverosh, while what? While he was, whatever celebration he was having. That's astounding. And we wake up in the morning that this guy wants to kill every man, woman, and child. What does that mean? So the Jews realized something critical, that civilization, forget about it. Any civilization can betray you and destroy you. No matter how loyal you are, no matter how much tax you pay, no matter how loyal you are even to the king, and you've demonstrated that, it doesn't mean a thing. Therefore, they realized civilization is bankrupt, really. It is subject to the whims of man. The only way to be civilized is the laws of the Torah. That's what they realized. They experienced what the Moshe told them 800 years before. You want to know why I give you so many laws, which are society laws, right? Because that's the only way a civilization can survive. It's not subject to the whims of man, you see. So they experienced what it is to makabel Torah, you see. And what happened as a result? Then they had the fear. The first thing was shock at the betrayal of how in the world could you do this. And then they realized what the Torah is, that the only way a civilization can occur, Torah is not only a path to spirituality, ruchnius, but it's the only way civilization can endure, you see, is Torah. That was the incredible insight that they had. And of course, the Moshe was right. But the Moshe could not force it on them. He forced them to take the Torah. But he couldn't tell them, by the way, you're wrong, just wait. No. The only way they could learn the lesson is by being free men in another civilization and experiencing the utter betrayal of Goyim, living among Goyim. You see. And then they understood. And because of the incredible insight that they had, we now understand. Kimu v'kiblu. They now re-accepted the Torah with complete avo. Why? So people make a mistake. Well, you know why? Because they were threatened by Achashverosh. They're threatened by Achashverosh, termination of their life. So now they accept the Torah? What does one have to do with the other? That's fear. What that means is fear. In other words, we're afraid God is going to punish us, right? And so on. So therefore we accept the Torah in order to avert the decree of death by Achashverosh. So what motivated them to accept the Kimu v'Kiblu, to accept the Torah completely, right? Was it again fear that maybe if we accept the Torah, God will save us? No, because it says Kimu v'Kiblu b'avo. They accepted with love. Love does not come from fear. The reason why they accepted is because the incredible insight of what civilization really is. What does it take to have a civilization? That's why. And that's why it says, enlightenment. That was the enlightenment. It was the enlightenment of what it takes to maintain a civilization. That the only way a civilization can endure is through Torah, not through man-made laws. And then they saw the incredible righteousness. You see, Torah Hashem Tamimo, and so on, right? That's what they saw in Purim. And that's the R.A.Y, enlightenment. The or, that's what they realized. Therefore, they accepted with love what they had done before. What did that mean? So they rectified the pagam of Kabbalah Torah, which they had to do because there's a spiritual necessity that the Jews have to accept the entire Torah, the Ahava. You see, it wasn't out of fear. Yeah, then after that they were afraid because the guy's going to kill them, you know. But the concept of Kibbutz is not out of fear. It's out of love. It is out of insight, an incredible insight into what they just experienced. An unbelievable betrayal. How can Achashverosh do this to us? For what? Because the guy gave him some cash? Okay, true, it was a lot of money. But so what? You know, that money was only because Achashverosh said to Haman, excuse me, you're going to take away an enormous amount of revenue, tax. So Haman said, okay, I'll supply you the revenue. You see? But so what? He didn't have to have Haman's revenue. He could have had that revenue from the Jews because all the Jews paid tax. It wasn't like he was going to lose it. You see? That the bribe wasn't money. The bribe was that he can go through with the Gzera. You see? So that's what they realized. The incredible corruption, the evil of Umas Ha'olam. That's what they realized. That was the greatness of Purim. And in many ways, that's what our greatness of Purim. So the question is this. If this is what the Jews realized, remember, the message of Purim is that the Torah is Tmima. There is no other way to live. Not only for Ruchnius, but even for civilization, there is no other way. What an insight. So of course you accept the Ava. That's the real message of Purim. And therefore the Chazal, because that was the message, but more important, let's now go through all the questions that I had asked, and you see how they're all really answered with this one idea of why the Jews was Kim of Kibbu, why they accepted the Torah with love. As I said, because of the insight of what a civilization really is. So, first of all, what's the essence? Like I just said, is the realization that Torah is not just a way, a device to achieve ruchnius, spirituality. It is the only device how to live your life here, how to make civilizations endure. There is no other way. So therefore, you need a Choshen Mishpat, you need Bava Kama, Bava. That's the only way it'll happen, you see. Second idea, Matanos Le'avyonim. Because Chazal, what was the insight? Wait a minute. And here's a second insight. If we can't rely on Goyim, if we can't rely on civilizations because they're sheker v'chozov, and whenever they want, they can just dismiss all the laws and kill you. So then who can we rely? And the answer is ourselves. Every Jew has to rely on another Jew. Achdus becomes the critical feature after that kind of an insight. But how do we foster Achdus? And the answer is Matanos Le'avyonim. Right? When you give a poor man money, he has a certain feeling towards you. Wow, thank you. There's a certain concept of what? I like you. Ava, Achdus. That's the first mitzvah that brings Achdus. Mishloach Manos. Why do we have Mishloach Manos? Really because of Achdus. It's not just to make sure that the Oni can buy stuff only. The real concept apparently is the Achdus, because when you give a gift, when you realize your friend is the only guy that you can rely on, that he won't betray you, basically, either we all stick together, or we all, what's the saying? We all die together.
Hang together.
We all what?
Either hang together or hang separately.
Okay. I don't like that.
Humble.
In other words, okay? In other words, we have to have an achdus because that's the only way we can survive. Forget about everybody else, the goyim. Therefore, Mishloach Manos fosters what? Achdus. Because you give a guy a gift, right? Wow, I love you, especially if it's chocolate. Anyway. Okay, anyway. So that answers, we understand, why is Purim a holiday? Because normally, if the Jews are saved, it's not a Yom Tov. How many times in history that they want to kill the Jews? But if the Jews are saved, but the real concept, if the Jews rectify a pagam of a spiritual necessity, that has to be a Yom Tov. You see? And the Jews rectified a tremendous defect because originally they were not makabel the Torah Shabbat Peh, or out of fear, right? But now they were makabel Torah Shabbat Peh b'ahava, right? And therefore they rectified the defect in creation, the spiritual necessity. Therefore, that's not meaning the Jews were saved. They actually undid a defect, and therefore that has to be a Yom Tov. That's how Chazal, those are the rules of Sanhedrin. They look, is there a tikkun of a previous rectification or correction of a previous problem or error or defect? If that's corrected in this event, that becomes a Yom Tov. Interesting. That's why Purim is a Yom Tov, because of that reason. Why were all Jews under Achashverosh for the last time? Because God couldn't wait. Because he needed every Jew to experience what a civilization is. So if he waited till the Jews were spread out, because remember, the time of Achashverosh, that was the last time that Jews were all under one kingdom, and therefore they could be wiped out under one king, because he wanted all of them to experience the bankruptcy of civilization. But later on, Oh, well, maybe that civilization is bankrupt, but this civilization is okay because now the Jews are spread all over. You see, so the real lesson has to be when all the Jews are in one civilization. That's why Purim had the Achashverosh. Very important concept. You see, why is an Amaleki present on Purim? It's interesting. Was Haman an accident in that sense? You know, was he just there? He just happened to be the villain of Purim? No. Why? Because Amalek is the arch enemy of God. He's the arch enemy of Jews. Period. The last one to go in the end of time is Amalek. The war of Gog and Magog is the war of Amalek against Klal Israel. See, he represents pure evil. Okay, and therefore Haman or Amalek intuitively realizes when the end is near. Why did he war with Jews at the time of Mount Torah? Because Amalek realized, right, or even if they didn't realize, the Malach of Amalek realized that Mount Torah, they're about to become redeemed. Moshe Rabbeinu was Mashiach ben Yosef, you see, and therefore, right, the Luchas Rishonis was the Or Mashiach. So therefore, that's the redemption. So who has to come before the redemption? Amalek. You see, it's like the Malach of Amalek realizes, right, that Amalek has to come now to stop the Jews from the Geula. Amalek always appears before the Geula because he's the last guy that God has to fight with. He's the end of evil. He's the greatest manifestation of evil, and therefore he's the last guy to go. You see, therefore he appeared right before Mount Torah. What about Purim? Because once the Jews had been makabel the Torah b'Abo, they completely rectified creation. Do you know that? And as a result of that, Purim would have been the forerunner of the Geula. Who would have been the Mashiach ben Yosef? Because if Purim through Mordechai and Esther, right, would have been the complete rectification, then Mashiach ben Yosef would have come immediately after that. Who was that? That was Ezra. Ezra's Sefer was Mashiach ben Yosef, which is interesting, you see. And had the Jews come back with him after Koresh gave permission, then Ezra would have been the Mashiach ben Yosef. How do we know? Because there's an interesting Chazal which says that Roy Ezra, right, that Ezra was so great that the Torah could have been given to him. Wait a minute. The Torah could have been given to him and not Moshe. What does that tell us? That he was Mashiach ben Yosef. You see, that Chazal alludes to who Ezra was. You see, what was the problem? Only 70,000 Jews came back with Ezra. So therefore, Mashiach didn't come. But if that's the case, if Purim is so great that the Tikkun of Purim, which is the insight that you need Torah for everything, including living a civilization, right? And that Tikkun would have rectified the pagam of the oral law, Kabbalah, then guess what? That would have been the end. The end? So the Malach of Amalek says, uh-oh, I gotta stop these guys. Who? Amalek. Amalek always appears before the end. You see. And therefore, the bad news is the Holocaust. The good news is Amalek. Right? Because Germany is Amalek, really. And Hitler, was a Gilgal of Haman, without getting into the codes and so on. But wait a minute. If that's the case, if we know Amalek always has to come right before the end, right? Then wait a minute. That means the Holocaust is a precursor to the Geula. That's the good news. You see, and just sharing that, what a tremendous repercussion of this concept that Amalek always has to appear before the end. He did the Holocaust, Germany. Okay? That's a very important idea and so on. But now we understand why Amalek, why Purim had to have an Amaleki, because that could have been the end, the Geula itself. Very important concept. Okay. Why is Yom Kippur subservient? Why is Purim greater? Because on Yom Kippur, why do we do tshuva? Because God is judging the world, and boy, are we frightened, right? You know, we're shaking, right? Because we're being judged, right? That's a very scary concept, you know? So the tshuva that is done on Yom Kippur is because of Yira. But the tshuva that was done on Purim is Ahava, isn't it? So the tshuva of Yom Kippur, of Purim, is much greater than Yom Kippur, because the tshuva is done through love. And therefore, Yom Kippurim, it's a day like Purim, because Purim is greater. It's what happened in the tshuva of Me'avo than Yom Kippur, which is a tshuva Me'yira. And that's why the Zohar says that. Great. Okay. I answered a lot of the questions, but there are questions I did not answer yet. Okay? I did not answer Adel Yoda, right? I did not answer costumes. 2. I did not answer why is Purim the name of Purim. 3. I did not answer why God's name is absent, which is 4. At all. Because Purim has a very important second theme. What is that? I want to show you something interesting. If you told me that there was an actual story of Purim, remember what I said last week by Amalek? I would never have believed it. And I brought out why. That doesn't make sense. But the Torah says it happened. If you told me that Purim happened, I would say it's impossible. That a story like Purim could never have happened. Why? Let's take a look. And I will show you that the likelihood of Purim happening is almost impossible. Let's take a look at Purim. And you also, after a while, I'm going to show you 15 reasons why Purim can never have happened. And of course, we know what did happen. So what does that mean? What's the take-home message? Here's the take-home message. Well, actually, here's the concept. Okay, 1. How did the whole business start? Because of the Seudah. The Megillah starts over this incredible meal that went on for who knows how long, right? Must have cost the guy a fortune, right? And all of a sudden, Achashverosh, he's drunk. I mean, he's really drunk. Apparently, he was Mekayim Mitzvah Abdul Yoda. Anyway, because he had Ruach HaKodesh and he knew that he would happen. Anyway, that's a problem. How did it all start? How does it all start? Right? So he says the following. Forgive me for being a little rough because I have to say, all of a sudden he wants Vashti, his queen. Now I'll tell you something. Achashverosh was not royal lineage. We know that. He was a tremendous general. And his whole claim to the throne was Vashti. Because she was the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. That was her, So his whole claim is he married the right woman. She was the real legitimate queen. And he married her so he became king. But he had no royal blood whatsoever. So imagine a guy says, I gotta please this crowd. And he's drunk. He says, my wife has to appear undressed. Okay? Is he out of his mind? Is he crazy? No man would ever degrade his wife that way. 1. 2, she's the queen. Why would a guy degrade her in front of the entire, and he had everybody there. I mean, it wasn't like, a private showing. If we use the terminology, right? It was a public viewing. Is he out of his mind? No king does that because it's not only a degradation of Vashti, it's a degradation of the queen, of the Malchus. Are you crazy? Right? Yeah, that's what he did. So I can't believe a guy would do this. I don't care how drunk he is. It is such a radical departure of the ways of mankind that it's inconceivable. You see, degrading his wife and degrading the Malchus, that's the first thing which I don't believe happened. The second thing, right, is he decides to do what? He kills Vashti. Are you crazy? She's your whole claim to the throne. Without her, you're nobody. So he has Vashti killed. It doesn't make sense. She's his whole claim to the throne because she's legitimately royal, right? And he's nobody, really. He's a commoner. That's all he was. That's a second incredible occurrence. Third incredible occurrence, right? When a king marries, what does he marry? He doesn't marry a common woman. He marries royalty because that's how nations cement treaties. Okay, it's like the king of Spain, the prince of Spain, right? He's going to marry the princess of France. So like that, they cement relationships, right? And that's how kings don't fight each other. Hey, because I don't want to kill myself, right? Kings don't marry commoners. They have commoners as concubines. Fine. They don't marry. They don't make them the queen. Got it? They don't do that kind of stuff. It's politically incorrect, right? And what happened? He decides to marry a commoner, Esther, right? Hey, what do you mean? You don't marry? Hey, who's Esther? To him, Esther's nobody from nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Who's Esther to him, right? So it's a third incredible occurrence. A king will marry a common woman as a queen, not as a concubine. Fourth idea, how is he going to pick out a beauty contest? What? What is this, Miss America? Like, what is this? Kings don't do this. They run a beauty contest. And this guy is seriously deluded. He needs real urgent psychiatric care. So the fourth incredible thing, he's running a beauty contest. Okay, so that's the fourth idea. The fifth thing, which is impossible to happen, and this is really impossible, is Esther 1. I mean, he must have had 100,000 girls lining up of all kinds, right? You didn't tell me, that's like winning the lottery. Remember the lottery was $600 million? The odds of winning that lottery was bigger, was more easier than she should win a beauty contest, because Chazal say that she had a green complexion and she was 70-something years old. Okay, she had a lot of chain. Fine. But what does chain have to do with a marriage, right? Because a king anyway has so many concubines. What does he care about chain? I mean, it's just incredible how she won the beauty contest. Anyway, so that's number 5. Then, okay, so that sets the stage. While she's dead, Esther's now queen. Okay, but we need more stuff going on, right? So all of a sudden, Mordechai is by the king's palace, and he has 2 guys talking to plot to overthrow the king, right? And he said, what luck that he caught a plot to kill the king. This doesn't happen. And not only that, they spoke in a language nobody knows. He knew because it was Sanhedrin, and a member of the Sanhedrin knows many languages, right? So he could hear, But imagine, and I guarantee you, they didn't scream what they wanted to do out loud. They whispered among themselves, So I mean, they couldn't find no place to talk about the plot. Then what? Then outside in the garden where Mordechai walked. Oh, what an incredible chance, right? It's chance. It's an incredible lucky streak, as they say. Anyway, so we have that, which is okay. Then the incredible thing is, let me ask something. If somebody saved your life, wouldn't you reward him? He saved your life. They checked it out, and they found out that Bixen Viserys wants to kill the king. They checked it out, right? And what did the king do? Kill Bixen Viserys, right? What do you do with the guy who saved your life? He saved the life of the emperor. Nothing. They forgot about Mordechai. How do you forget about a guy that just saved your life? That's a nes nigla. It's a nest to forget a guy that just saved your life, your worthless life. It's incredible. And they forgot all about it. Of course, Mordecai, you see, it doesn't happen that way. He should have rewarded Mordecai with a dukedom, to be a duke, or something, or one of them had the title of Lord in the House of Commons. Something, you don't forget about the guy, totally. And even if Achashverosh forgot about it, what about all his officers? They would remember this, and his advisors would have said, excuse me, you need to reward this guy. Oh, so yeah, you're right. Everybody forgot about Mordechai. It's like everybody was struck with amnesia. This does not happen. Okay, then what happens is the king, before the big party with Haman and he can't sleep. What an incredible thing. The king can't sleep, right? So what does he do? So what does a guy do who can't sleep? So if he's a guy, he'll turn on the TV, right? Or grab a bottle of liquor. I mean, he'll do something, right? What does he do? right? He requests the Chronicles of the Persia. Now, I could suggest a lot of better things than reading it, unless he felt it was so boring and Zichar fall asleep. You know, excuse me, this is the reading material you want before you know to get you to sleep? The Chronicles of Persia? You know, and I want to tell you something, Persia was an old kingdom. You probably had at least 50 volumes of all the different things, the edicts and all that of Persia, right? Right? So just to request that is absurd. Then what they do, they walk over and they pull out the very volume and they open up to the exact page that says, Mordechai saved your worthless life. Because they didn't say worthless. Right? So everybody remembers, oh, wait, you're right, right? So the king says, what do we do to this guy? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Which is shocking itself. So what does the king say? So the king says, right? He says, okay, we need to reward the guy. What do you do to a guy? You look at nest after nest after nest. What do you do, right? So of course, at that moment in time, by Yovei Haman walks in, knocks on the door of the king's chamber, bedchamber, right? Because Vayovo Haman, everybody claps, right? Or, you know, right? And so wait a minute, there's something that doesn't make sense. I assume that when Haman couldn't sleep, it was probably in the middle of the night. Why would Haman knock on the door in the middle of the night? What, was he crazy? Does this make sense? Right? Knock on the king's door in the middle of the night, right? Okay, so Haman knocks. What's he doing here in the middle of the night? So they enter, and the king, oh, an opportunity, because he's up anyway. What would you do to a guy, right, that the king wants to honor him, you know, and so on and so forth, you know? He doesn't say, it's a nest. I want to honor somebody that saved my life, because Haman would have figured out it's Mordechai, right? And he wouldn't have answered. But the king never said, it's Mordechai that I want to honor. So this crazy shaitan says, well, of course, you know what you do? Because he said, it's me, who is greater than anybody that the king wants to honor. You see? And of course, the king's horse, the crown, the malbush, essentially, right, a substitute king. That's really essentially what it is. Now, that is absolutely insane. Why? Why is this insane? I'll tell you why. Because every king always suspects their Grand Vizier, that the Grand Vizier wants to assassinate them. And that's what happened in Rome. The Roman emperors, they killed off their brothers and their sisters. I mean, much worse, right? And the Grand Vizier. So this is a guy that tells the king, you know, right? He figures it's him. So Haman is saying, well, I want to wear your crown, right? I want to ride your horse. And I want everybody screaming, this is what is done. Are you out of your mind? You are actually, and the king is a drop on the paranoia. It doesn't take much to push him over the edge. And it's a machlokes rishonim if you really went over the edge already. But anyway, right? So also, why would Haman do that? Is he crazy? You don't put in the mind of the king clearly that you want to knock him off, assassinate him, take him over. And Haman is not a stupid guy. You see? What kind of advice is this? So of course, Haman, the king already begins to suspect. Excuse me, what? You know, nobody says that. It's unheard of. What do you mean? Okay, I want to honor him. So does that mean you make him a king? The crown? You know, it's beyond belief. The garments, the crown, and his horse. And not only that, but somebody screaming, the other, you know. I mean, that's like an announcement. I'm going to kill you, Ahasuerus. You might as well have said, by the way, I'm gunning for you. It's as clear as a message. I just think I'll tell you, Purim is not a story about a tragedy. It's a comedy. It really should be an incredible comedy routine. Because these things don't happen. Okay. So what happens? Oh, so now what happens when all of a sudden, fine. So Ahasuerus says to Haman, you're going to lead this guy. What you should know is a bazillion for Haman. You know? You want to honor somebody too, but you don't have the Grand Vizier. You imagine Obama wants to honor somebody. So he has Biden. Leading the guy on a horse, right? With the presidential seal. I mean, that's what the equivalent is. We laugh. It's impossible. There's a guy on a horse with a presidential seal, the signet with the president, right? With, of course, you have to take along the what's called the football. The nuclear signals, right? He's got to carry that too, because he's now the king, right? It's like incredible what's going on here, right? And Biden is leading them, and he's screaming out to the Congress, "This is what happens to a guy." Anyway, it's comical. Anyway, so what happens? Okay, by the way, that was a murder hashgacha in that wine, because the rule is that this earth, the relationship between people here, must reflect the balance in Shemayim of Tumah and Tahara, Tumah and Kedusha. Because the Jews did Tshuva, therefore the Kedusha was much greater than the Tumah of the Southern. So that had to reflect itself here when Haman would lead Mordechai. This is an incredible indicator. You know what that was? That was Haman saying, "Cut it out! Stop it already! You're embarrassing me." Anyway, I'm making a joke because I'm getting ready for Purim. But just know, it's all true. This concept where Haman had to leave Mordechai really is an indicator that the Jews had succeeded, where the Kedusha was much greater than the Torah. It's a barometer. Whatever happens up there must be reflected here. You see that many times, but there's a classic place where you see that the Kedusha is now far greater than the Tumah, and therefore Haman has to lead Mordechai, and Mordechai is the king, the Grand Vizier. I mean, that's what the opinion is, which you see that. You see that also by Yosef. That's why Yosef became the Grand Vizier, because Yosef, the Tzaddik Mitzrayim, had been massacred the Tumah to such an extent where he was Mamasheni L'Melech. It was right up the Paroi. In the Tumah balance was where the Kedusha was right below the Tumah. And therefore Yosef had to be the Grand Vizier. I don't get into the whole thing, but that's the way it works. It's a Brahman and so on. So Haman is leading, of course, which is a bizoin to Haman, you should know. And not only that, the greatest bizoin is when his daughter, you know what I'm saying? I mean, she did the coup de grace, as they say. It's like the cherry on the top of the whipped cream. She's figuring Haman, the guy leading was got to be Mordechai. So she dumped all the stuff that they usually throw out, right? And and could you imagine the busha of the Grand Vizier walking around with all the excrements falling off him? It had to be beyond belief, right? And Haman, he's stupid, and his wife was right. His wife was smarter than Haman. Once you begin to fall, she figured it out. No good. She knew this was a barometer, but he was too megalomaniacal to figure out there was a barometer. So he continued with his nonsense to kill Mordechai, right? With the 350 homicide and so on and so forth. But she figured it out already. That's why you learn a guy should always listen to his wife. Maybe he wouldn't have died had he listened to her, because he would have said, "Uh-oh, my muzzle is going south. I better watch it," and so on. Anyway, it was not keep protesting to kill Mordechai and so on. Anyway, and then of course, and the next incredible thing is that Haman, right? They have this party, and Haman throws himself at the feet of Esther. Of course, he was really pushed on top of her. So I mean, the worst thing you can do, the worst, literally, is to abduct or to harass a king's wife in presence of the king. I mean, it's a suicide trip. It is called the ultimate death wish. That's exactly what Haman did, right? Okay, there's a medrash that the Malach pushed him on and so on and so forth. But but I'm sure when he finally landed on top of Esther, he probably said, "I can't believe I'm doing this." It's incredible. Anyway, and of course, Charbona says, and by the way, Charbona, he did the clinch, And of course, Haman was hanged the next day. I mean, look at the series of events. It's a comedy, really, when you think about it, because all these things don't happen in real life. And the last thing that happened, which is incredible. Okay, so the Jews were saved. So Mordechai was saved. But it's not only that. When Haman was killed, there was an opening. It was advertised in the paper for Grand Vizier. And guess what? Mordechai applied. He became Grand Vizier. This doesn't happen. Where if a Russia dies, the Jew comes up. It's like, okay, you saved the Jews. You saved Mordechai. Now Mordechai becomes the Grand Vizier? Of course, because that's a barometer. But now the Jews are right up to the tumah, and they can overthrow it, and so on, you know? What do we see from all this? These things could never really have occurred. Maybe one or two, but not the whole series. It's incredible. What do you learn from this? Big lesson. Obviously, since these things defy chance, every one of these occurrences defies chance. In combination, they are astronomical, right? It's the same thing with the code of the Megillah, right? So therefore, how did they happen? And the answer is Shalom, God. What the Jews realized, and that's how they understood, that God is behind everything. That's what happens. And they realized that even though the Moshe now, his normal Hanhoga was that he would help us miraculously, openly. But they now realize that the Moshe will now help them covertly, but he's still there. You see, they understood the concept that Hashgacha never left, but now it doesn't operate overtly, it operates covertly. There's a change in the Hoga itself, you see. And that's why the Russian is not mentioned in the Megillah at all, you see, because he's not openly doing it, so you don't have his name mentioned openly, you see, but he's doing it covertly, behind the scenes, you see, and therefore that's why he's not mentioned. And therefore, we see several other lessons. First of all, that's why we have costumes. A costume is what? You know, it's an appearance of this, but I'm really behind it, right? The appearance of the Megillah is called coincidence, isn't it? It's called the appearance or the costume of the Megillah is called coincidence, right? But that's not what's happening really. Behind the costume, we all know there's a real guy. There's somebody else. That's the real person, except the way it appears to you is a costume. Therefore, we wear costumes to illustrate that concept, right? That all the events of mankind, right? Chance, whatever, is the costume. But behind the costume is the Shalom. You see. You know what it's like? It's like, I give an example of the concept of what is a coincidence. What is a coincidence? It's when two parallel chains of events occur and they intersect at a certain point. They're independent causal chains of events, but they intersect at an exact point that saves somebody. You see. I'll give you an example. There's a guy who has to go finish a deal in France. Okay? And it's got the name of the company. They have a big meeting worth $100 million, right? He lands in France, right? And he searches for the paper, the address. He can't find it, right? And I can't find the address of a $100 million deal, right? He doesn't know where it is, who it is, what it is. He doesn't know what time it is, what day it is, right? So he's panicking, right? He also calls up his office and he remembers the office is closed because it's a holiday in America. You see? So nobody's around. And guess what? Not only they're not around, they're all in the bar getting shiur, right? And so on. So he doesn't know what to do. There's no way to find out, right? He's going crazy, right? And he's in the airport. He doesn't even know where to go, what to do, right? So he goes to a phone booth or he sits down, you know? He sits down on a bench, right? And right next to him, there's another guy that sits down, you know? And so, right? And all of a sudden, the guy mentions, oh, by the way, I have to see somebody in such and such a company because, right, that he has to be at that meeting. You see, and the guy also came from China, right? Right? And also the guy said, I can't believe my luck. This guy is telling me exactly what I have to know, right? That's a coincidence. But wait a minute. The causal chain that brought him to France is his aspect of the deal. The causal chain that brought the other guy from China in two different, what's called causal chains of events, but they intersected exactly at the time of sitting on the bench in that airport. right? And that coincidence is what saved this guy the $100 million deal. Wow. What a hashgacha niflo, right? That's called coincidence. But coincidence is the way God runs the world. That's the costume. The costume is coincidence. Behind the coincidence is the Shalom. That's why we wear costumes. You see? That's the concept of a costume. Not only that, but something else which is very profound. Adar Yoda. Why do you have to get drunk? Or why do you have to not know? What does that have to do with Purim? What we see is a murder zach. Purim is an incredible lesson. To us, there's a Baruch Mordechai, there's a hero, and right, and there's a Orahoma, there's a villain, right? Because to us, we see this. There are heroes and there are villains. But are there heroes and villains to the Rebbe Shalom? Of course not. Everybody must do the will of God. The difference is either you do it because you want to do it and you get credit, or you do it because you're compelled to do it and you don't get credit. You see, Haman or Mordechai did it because he's a tzaddik. Baruch Mordechai, right? So he's the hero. Why? Not because he saved the Jews, because he did it on his own free will. But Haman also saved the Jews. Why? Because he brought the tikkun to the Jews. Because he threatened the Jews, they were able to do tshuva. And because they did tshuva, they corrected the pagam, the defect of Kabbalah Satorah, and therefore they were zoicha to have this as a messianic opportunity. I mean, wait a minute, is that what Haman thought? You think Haman woke up and say, wow, I need to remove the pagam of Klal Yisrael? I don't think so. Except the Rebbe Shalom used him. He's a tool in the hands of God. So is Mordechai a villain? Not through his acts, right? But through his bechira, he's a villain. Because he never chose, God forced him to do it. So to God, there's no thing as in terms of the act. There's no such thing as a villain and a hero. Because everybody does the will of God. The question is, do you get the credit or not? You see? Therefore, Baruch Mon, and that's what you see from the Megillah, that even Haman did an incredible chesed. In fact, one of the great grandchildren of Haman became a Tana. You see? Because Haman can say, you're right, I really wanted to kill the Jews. Right? Well, I'm going to tell you something. Out of me came the tikkun. You see? It's interesting. It's an indirect tikkun, you see. So therefore, the Jews realize a profound concept. Don't worry. To us, there are heroes and villains. But to God, there's no such thing as a hero and villain because they all do his will. The question is not if they do his will, they do. The question is, do they get credit for doing his will? That's the difference. But you see, but that's not a villain. A villain is somebody who does something, an act that's evil. But there's no such thing as anybody doing an act contrary to the will of God. That's how absolute is the Shlita. And therefore, you need to learn that from Purim. That both are the messengers of God. And therefore, you got to get drunk where you don't understand. There is no difference between blessed Mordechai and cursed Haman. The only difference is in their desire and their bechira, free will, but not in their act. They're both heroes, if you want to use that word. In terms of their act, they both saved the Jews. Mordechai saved the Jews because he saved the Jews. Haman saved the Jews because of his fear, the Jews did tshuva and rectified the whole concept. And they had this incredible insight of civilization needs a Torah. Wow, you realize what, our Haman is in Russia, I mean, I'm not, obviously, but think about what Haman did. Because of him, the whole pagam, the whole defect of Kabbalah Torah was corrected, because he was a tool of God. That's why there's a mitzvah of Adar Yoda, you see. And that's why the name of the holiday is called Purim. Purim is chance. It's a lottery. A lottery is dictated by chance. Chance? Oh, no. There's no such thing as chance. Purim, which you would think is because of randomness and chance, no. The name of the holiday is the outer garment, or the appearance is Purim. But the inner garment is Hashgacha Niflo. You see? So they call the holiday chance or randomness, because we learn that there's no such thing in Purim. That's the beautiful lesson, the second incredible theme, that God is in control of everything. No such thing. See, and even though there are Rishonim, but they can no person can do against the will of God. It's astounding. they may not get credit, true, but they cannot go against the will, because that's the incredible shlita of God, mastery over all aspects of creation. That's how absolute his direction is, yeah, and so on, his directorship. So I think yeah, I answered them all. Wow, that's it. But it wasn't just an answer. It's not a patch job. You see, you have a hole in the pants, put a patch here. Another hole, another patch. No. It's one unifying concept of what Purim is. What Purim teaches us, first of all, is the incredible insight. Is the incredible insight of what? Of the fact that, listen, without the Torah, there is no civilization. Forget about the fact that there's no spiritual state. That's out. He's not even a civilization. And therefore to really illustrate that, who illustrates this best? Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu comes and he says to his wife Sarah, he says, hey, they're gonna kill me, right? You're gonna tell me the wife? We know what's gonna happen. They're gonna grab you to be his concubine or his queen, whatever, and they're gonna kill me, and so on. You gotta say you're my sister. So Avraham Avinu says to Avimelech, right? So obviously Avimelech finds out very quickly that it's his wife, because God punished the whole house, rapidly, and so on. So Avimelech comes running over to Avraham Avinu. He says, what are you doing? He says, well, Avraham Avinu says, if I would have told you that she's my wife, you would have killed me and taken her. So Avimelech says an incredible statement. He says, what are you talking? We don't do this kind of stuff in this place. Other guys do this. You know what I'm saying? We're righteous people. We are upstanding people. We don't do this kind of stuff. Steal men's wives and then kill them also. So Avraham Avinu, and Avimelech was very good. He laid it thick, right? So Avraham Avinu looks him square in the eyes, says, excuse me. And he says one of the greatest, most profound statements of all politics. What does he say? I took one look at this place, and I realized, Rak ein yiras Elokim b'makom hazeh. There's no fear of God. What does that mean? What's he saying? He said, I want to tell you something. All politicians are inherently corrupt. They have to be. Why? Because since they need you for their power, they are going to cater to you, which means that they're going to go against their constituents and have special interest to you. Yeah, but you are violating your public trust, aren't you? What's the public trust of a politician? Is to do what his guys who voted him in. It's called his constituents, right? Politicians don't do that. Occasionally they do that. You see, what they do is they always cater to special interests, because these guys are going to keep me in power. That's a violation of public trust. Why? Because they're bribed. Every politician is bribed. What's the bribe? I once told you, I think it was Lyndon Johnson, I'm not sure, but they once asked him, when you got in, when you were voted in, and you sat down in the Oval Office, what was the first thing that you thought about as you were president? So I think it was Johnson. You know what Johnson said? How do I keep the seat? Power. How do I maintain the power? It's such an incredible trip. He said to him, how do I keep this power? So therefore, his whole behavior is what? Is accepting bribes to keep power by putting guys in power that will enable him to keep ruling as a president. That's why every politician ultimately is corrupt. The question never is if they're corrupt. They're all corrupt. The question is, how corrupt are they? You see, and some guys are totally corrupt. Some guys, every once in a while, they wake up in the morning and say, wait, I got to do something for my constituents, right? But meanwhile, 90% of the behavior is sheikhah. That's why there's so many scandals in government and so on, So then what does the politician do? How is he going to make sure he doesn't get bribed? Because everybody wants a bribe, because the bribe, if I bribe you, I have a self-interest. What kills every politician? Self-interest. And therefore, they what? They accept bribes to do something for you, because you do something for me, you can keep me in power. So every politician can be bribed because of self-interest. And the self-interest is always not only how to get elected, but how to stay elected. You see, so it's almost like an honest politician is an oxymoron. It's impossible, because we're all subject to sheikhah. That's why we're all biased, because we have self-interest. So the question is, wait a minute, How does a guy protect himself from sheikhad? And the answer is accountability. If you know that someday you have to stand in front of a king, a being, that's going to ask you, excuse me, I put you in power, right? What did you do? You corrupted the public trust, right? If you believe that's years to the king, if you know someday you're going to face God, right? And he's going to hold you accountable because you'll be judged, maybe that will protect you against sheikhad. Maybe. And that's what R.A.Y said to him. He said, I don't care if you're a king, because a king can make the laws and he can break the laws. In this case, if you have a self-interest, you'll break the laws. And one of the laws you break is my wife, right? You want her. So therefore, you're now going to pass a presidential edict that it is not permitted to take wives, you see, because you're biased, and that's what you want. So a law can be made, it can be broken. That's what R.A.Y did. Why? Because you don't think you're accountable. You don't think that you're going to be held accountable one day in front of the great judge. You see? So that's what he said. There's no Yiras Elokim here. If there's no Yiras Elokim, hey, you can do whatever you want when you choose. You see, because you're not going to be judged. You want to be able to be accountable, and therefore, I cannot trust you. So what do you mean we don't do this kind of stuff here? Of course you do this kind of stuff every day of the week. R.A.Y said one of the most profoundest understanding of what a ruler has to have. It's more important for a ruler not to be bribed than it is to be competent. I'll tell you why. Because many people are incompetent. I mean, look at Obama. It's beyond belief what the guy did to America, right? But why is that? Because what he should have done is, even if I don't know many aspects of what? Of governing, but there's still something I have. I have my advisors. They're experts in every field. What I have to have is a Seichel Yosher. I have to have a reasonable, fair mind. That's all I need. I don't have to know everything about how to rule. I got my advisors for that, my cabinet for that. You see, so therefore, all they have to do is a Seichel Yosher, is a straight head to know what's right and wrong, because the advisors are the one who tells you everything, right? But the second thing every politician has to have is Yiras Elokim, because they'll accept bribes all over the place. And that's what R.A.Y said. And that's exactly what Achashverosh did. That's what the Jews realized, that civilization is nothing more than man-made laws, you see. And man-made laws is only because, why are there man-made laws? Because we want to all live as a society. So if I steal from you, guess what? You're going to steal from me. So we got to pass a law that you don't steal property, or else the society cannot exist, you see. So therefore, all laws are man-made to protect the survival or the preservation of a society. But guess what? A king or any ruler can just eviscerate the rule, because I want Abrahamov's wife. I want to get elected, so I'm going to take this special interest and give this corporation a reshus, right, to go mine in a place, even though all the constituents are going to die because of the chemical waste. Who cares? These guys are giving me money. I mean, this happens all the time. You see, that's R.A.Y. That's what the Jews realized. Man-made laws, which are supposed to preserve society, are that. They are man-made. They can be made and broken at will by any guy who has the authority to break them. So how can you trust any civilization? Achashverosh, is he crazy? One lawyer citizen, he decided to break the law, kill everybody for no reason, because of his Haman's crazy kinda. For that, everybody's chayav misa. Is he crazy, the guy? Achashverosh is either incredibly crazy or he's incredibly evil. No normal person would ever do that. Or he could be incredibly anti-Semitic. But Achashverosh, I don't think was anti-Semitic. He's either crazy or evil. In any case, this is what we see. If R.A.Y long ago told us what every politician has to have and what maintains civilization. Yiras Elokim. That's really what it is. You either have it or you don't. If you don't have it, society is over. And that's exactly what happens in, I hate to say it, the Israeli government, which is filled with corruption. The American government, which is filled, and these are decent governments. What about in Mexico and everybody else? These guys only rule you sheikhad. If you don't mordida, if you don't shmir, you're finished. They say in Mexico, the law is shmiring. forget about the House, the Congress, whatever makes the laws in Mexico, The law is how much money to give the cop. That's what it is. What is this? That's civilization. So therefore, the only way civilization survives is, of course, Yerushalayim. And that's what the Jews realized. It's either Torah or it's nothing. The second thing they realize is that God is the costume. The costume of God is coincidence. But behind that costume is God. He rules everything. And therefore, if that's the case, there really is no such a difference between Haman and Mordechai. They both do the will of God. Whether they get credit or not is a different story. You see, and now we understand many things in terms of what the essence of Purim is. These two fundamental ideas. And to end off, why do we eat Haman Tashin? Haman is Haman, and Tashin is pocket. We need to put Haman in our pocket, right? And that's what we need to do. We need to put him in our pocket, put him out of the way, and destroy him. And that's why, what do we do with Haman Tashin? We eat him. We need to destroy this guy, consume him. You see, everything on Purim is all about destroying Haman, that God rules, right, over the Aftas. That's what it's all about. So therefore, let's keep it in mind that the premise of Purim is all about what? These ideas. So when you enter Purim, this is what you really have to think about. The absolute superiority of Torah, but greater than any other civilized law that man can erect and so on and so forth. And that nothing is not known to the Rosh Hashanah. He knows everything. More important, nobody can go against his will. Nobody. And that's how he rules. And that's how he is always with us. So even today where we have Hester, Rosh Hashanah is behind everything that has ever happened, except the costume of God. Remember, it's coincidence, but God is behind the costume, you see. Okay, so I wish everybody a Freilich Purim, and therefore I hope maybe this Purim, the Gulu will begin.
You take questions?
Yes, you gotta hurry.
Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Any questions?
What was
By the way, this is the last year. I mean, not the last year, but for this series. I hope you enjoyed it.
what was work?
Why don't you stop clapping? This is because I want to get everybody in the spirit of Purim. Yeah, go ahead. What's the question?
When Mordechai was saw the situation, on what basis did you make the decision?
Who? Mordechai? Yeah. Make what decision? I don't know what you're saying.
To take 8 tablets together with Esther, what to do?
Well, because he had to do it off. I mean, Mordechai had Ruach HaKodesh, but they had to correct this. They had to concoct a strategy, and the bunch would be behind them. That's listen, Anybody? Any other questions?
What's the topics of the Shabbat?
The what?
The topics of the Shabbat that I know, according to how you explained it, was civilization about.
You notice that the Sheva Mitzvahs are civilization? It's exactly what they are. They're not ruchnistic things, because the main thing God wants is civilization to endure.
Why didn't you have a
What?
Shabbat Mitzvah? You really say civilization cannot survive without
But the Sheva Mitzvahs are Torah.
it's not
But it's minimal. But the Moshe didn't want to do Taryad, but what he gave is the all of them. To believe in a God, a Rizorah, Nus, Gneva. If the Goyim observed those mitzvahs, they would be able to endure.
Like you say, it's not the same thing as
Well, the reason why the Sheva mitzvahs didn't have a kiyum, right, is because they don't believe those Sheva mitzvahs are from God. They're man-made. The Sheva mitzvahs of Ger Toshim has to believe that those Sheva mitzvahs were commanded by God. If not, then he's not a Ger Toshim. So once you don't believe it's God, it's man-made. Man-made, Shoichad, just spend the whole thing. You need to believe that, Rambam says that. You need to believe that they're God-given, and that's the whole power behind those mitzvahs. Once you don't believe in God, right, and there's no Yerushalayim, then it's Avimelech all over again. So even those Sheva mitzvahs won't save you.
So never had it in the Surah, never really took hold of it all.
Which
time I'm saying the Surah of the Shabbat.
Well, Ger Toshiv, Well, there is an Indian, there's a Get Toshav. Get Toshav is the Shalom.
We have
Yeah. Yeah, sure, exactly. There's a whole thing called B'nai Noach, and all kinds. They observe the Shalom mitzvahs. Yeah, sure. Anybody else?
You said that the tshuva from the Am Yisrael was Kivlu was a tshuva from Abba, but wasn't there a tshuva that preceded that? Perhaps that from the 3 days of Esther because of the fear of the.
No, but yeah, there was fear, but the tshuva was the insight. The simcha. The oiro was the insight, and the simcha was because of the insight.
When did it come? After the saving or even
before? Before. I maintain it was immediate shock of what happened. Imagine it wasn't everybody woke up in the United States and there's an edict, kill all the Jews, right? What was the first reaction? Shock, right? And then there's fear. Then you have to manipulate the politicians to stop all that kind of stuff. But the first thing is I can't believe what just happened.
So then that statement at the end, by Yehudim Ha'is R.A.Y, is really going retroactively back to that.
Well, the edict of Achashverosh, yeah. And then Kimo V'Kivlos at the end of the Megillah, yeah. Once they realize that, they say, hey, it's our Torah and nothing else, and that's the end of it. That's really the message of Purim. We have everything we need to be Shalom, Shlemus.
So
that's really what it is. You want to be Shlemus? You want to be perfect, complete? It's only the Torah, which means the Torah is Shlemus in terms of Ruchnius, and the Torah is Shlemus in terms of Kashmias, society. It's an amazing thing that the Moshe
They weren't Zeicha, even though it was a tikkun for Hasina, they weren't Zeicha the Shina the Babli like Hasina itself.
Yeah.
It still was an ace.
Yeah, because in the Nevuah, Mordechai was on Sheknes HaGdolah. The last Nevuah, the Nevi'im was, Chavi Zechai. Once that ended, so then the whole Hanhoka of Gilui ended. The Moshe had to show them I'm still around, and that is all those incredible, impossible occurrences. The comedy, right, of what happened before. You look at that and say it's impossible for this to happen, and they realize that of course it's possible because the Moshe has not abandoned us.
According to the last shiur, it's like that Hashem permeates all the details of the world, even in civilization that's really Mechias HaMolech. But everything is under the rule of the Yisrael.
Yeah,
even then,
of course.
Really, what?
Yes, of course. Thank you, gentlemen.
Right.
Oh.